I used to believe there were people in this world who were completely unreachable, people who lived in a different lane of life, following a straight line so perfectly that someone like me could only watch from the shadows. Ethan Carter was one of those people. He was confident without being loud, kind without trying, and always straight. At least, that's what he said. That's what everyone believed. That's what I told myself for years. But there was one night that changed the way I saw him, changed the way I saw myself. A night that started like nothing at all. We met in college, during a group project neither of us wanted to do. I still remember how he smiled at me when I dropped my folder and papers scattered across the floor. He didn't laugh. He helped me pick them up. His fingers brushed mine for just a second, and I somehow managed to convince myself it meant nothing. From that day on, he treated me differently. Not special in an obvious way. Just softer. He'd save me a seat in class. Walk beside me instead of ahead of everyone else. Ask how my day was, and actually listen to the answer. I told myself it was just how he was. A good guy. A normal, straight guy. By the time we graduated. He was dating Megan. She was sweet, warm, the kind of person you couldn't hate even if you tried. When he told me they were engaged, I smiled and congratulated him, then went home and stared at my ceiling for hours, feeling like something inside my chest had cracked and settled. Life moved on, or at least it pretended to. We didn't talk every day anymore, but he still called sometimes. Late at night, driving home, when things felt heavy, I always picked up. That night started with a message. Hey, you around? I stare at my phone longer than I should have. Yeah, I type back. What's up? Can you come over? Just to hang out. Megan's out of town. I don't want to be alone. I should have said no. I knew I should have. But instead, I grabbed my jacket and drove across town with a heart that wouldn't slow down. His apartment was warm and dimly lit when I walked in. The familiar scent of coffee and laundry detergent hung in the air. He smiled when he saw me, and something in his eyes softened in that way I remembered too well. Thanks for coming, he said. Yeah, I replied. Of course. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, talking about nothing important. Work, old classmates, funny memories from college. He laughed, and I forgot to breathe for a second. Some habits don't die. They just hide. At some point, the conversation shifted. It always did. I feel like I'm running out of air sometimes, he said suddenly, staring at the dark TV screen like it might answer him. I glanced at him. What do you mean? Like, I'm doing everything right. Job, relationship, future plans. He huffed a quiet laugh. So, why do I feel like I'm wearing someone else's life? I didn't know what to say. I never did when he spoke like that. Honest. Bare. You're doing great, I offered softly. That's the problem, he replied. I shouldn't feel this empty. Silence settled between us. Not awkward, just heavy. The power flickered. Once, twice, and then the lights went out completely. The room dropped into shadow, lit only by the faint streetlight leaking through the curtains. Guess we didn't pay the electricity bill, he murmured with a small laugh. I stood up slowly. Let me check the breaker. In the hall, he said. I walked past him, brushed by his shoulder. The air felt different, thicker, like the room was breathing with us. When I came back, the lights were still out. We both stood there for a second too long, neither of us moving back to the couch. This is stupid, he said quietly. What is? I asked. This feeling. My heart started to race. Which feeling? He didn't answer right away. He stepped closer, just a little, close enough that I could feel warm from his skin, even through the thin layer of space between us. Have you ever wondered, he said, voice barely louder than a whisper, what life would be like if we didn't pretend all the time? The words hung in the air like smoke. I swallowed. My mind screamed at me to step back, to joke, to break the moment. But my feet stayed planted. My heart betrayed me. Pretend what? I asked softly, even though I knew. He looked at me then, really looked at me. In the half-light, his face looked more vulnerable than I'd ever seen. That we're always exactly who everyone wants us to be. The silence stretched between us, long and fragile. I thought about Megan, about everything he had, everything he was supposed to be. I thought about the years I'd spent teaching my heart to be quiet. And still I didn't move. The apartment felt too small, the air too thin. He lifted his hand slightly, like he wanted to touch me, and was afraid of what that would mean. I shouldn't be thinking like this, he said. You don't have to, I replied, even though my voice shook. But we both knew that wasn't true. The streetlight flickered behind him, casting shadows across his face. And in that quiet, fragile darkness, it felt like we were standing at the edge of something neither of us had the courage to name. That was the night everything started to change. And I didn't know yet that once the line was crossed in your heart, you could never really go back. The silence after his words felt louder than any sound. I didn't know where to look, so I looked at the floor, at the shadows stretching across the carpet, at anything that wasn't his eyes. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. I don't want to mess things up, he said softly. You won't. I replied too quickly, even though we both knew we already had. We moved back to the couch eventually, but not to our old places. There was less space between us now. Not touching. Not quite, but close enough that every small movement felt important. Our shoulders brushed once, and neither of us pulled away. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, hands loosely clasped. Megan thinks I'm fine, he said. She thinks I'm excited about the wedding, about the house, about everything. I kept my voice calm. Aren't you? He let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for years. I should be. She's good. She deserves someone who's all in. He paused, jaw tightening. I don't even know what all in feels like. The room was quiet again, the kind of quiet that makes every word feel dangerous. When I'm with you, he added, almost like he hadn't meant to say it, I don't feel like I'm performing. My throat went dry. Ethan, I'm not saying I don't know what I'm saying, he interrupted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I just feel different around you, like I can breathe. I stared at my hands, twisted tightly together. Part of me wanted to stand up and leave before something I couldn't undo happened. Another part, the part that had been quiet for too long, didn't want to move at all. He shifted slightly, turning toward me. Our knees almost touched. The air between us felt alive. You don't have to say anything, he said. Just don't lie to me. Not now. I hesitated. Every safe answer disappeared from my mind. I've never felt normal around you. I admitted. The words felt like stepping off a cliff. He didn't look shocked. He just looked calm, like maybe he'd been waiting to hear that. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just existed in that fragile space, where everything felt close to breaking but somehow gentle at the same time. His hand moved first. Not fast, not sure. It hovered in the space between us before lightly brushing mine resting on the couch. It wasn't a grab. It wasn't a pull. Just a brief touch, like a question. I didn't pull away. My mind screamed about consequences, about Megan, about lines that shouldn't be crossed. But my heart, stubborn and tired of pretending, beat louder. You should hate me for this, he whispered. I don't, I replied, and surprised myself at how honest it sounded. We sat like that, hands barely touching, like the smallest contact might shatter us. It felt more powerful than anything I'd ever experienced. There was no rush, no wildness, just a quiet, terrifying closeness. He leaned back slightly, still close. I've never talked about this with anyone, he said. I don't even have words for it. You don't need words, I said. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and the room felt smaller again. His forehead tilted forward, close enough that I could feel his breath, warm and unsteady. We stopped just short of touching. Time felt like it stretched in around us, like we were balanced on something sharp and dangerous. I'm supposed to be straight, he whispered. So quietly I almost didn't hear it. I built my whole life around that. I know, I said, though it hurt to say it. Silence. Nothing explicit happened. Nothing that could be pointed to and labeled. But in that moment, everything had already shifted. Boundaries weren't broken with actions. They were broken with feelings we both refused to push away. He pulled back first, like reality had finally caught up to him. He stood up, rubbed his face, and let out a shaky breath. "This is a bad idea," he said. I nodded, even though my chest ached. "Yeah." But neither of us moved toward the door. We talked about meaningless things after that. Work deadlines, movies, music. But the air never went back to normal. Every glance held too much. Every pause said too much. When the lights finally flickered back on, the room felt different. Too bright, too real, like it could expose what we were trying not to admit. He walked me to the door when it got late. "So," he said quietly, hands in his pockets, "thanks for coming over." "Anytime," I replied, even though my voice felt fragile. We stood there just inches apart. He lifted his hand, hesitated, and rested it briefly against my shoulder. Not gripping, not demanding, just there. "Be safe," he said. "You too." The door closed gently behind me. As I walked down the hallway toward the stairs, my heart felt heavy and light at the same time. Nothing clear had happened, and yet everything had. That night wasn't something we could joke about. It wasn't something we could erase. It settled quietly inside me, like a secret I hadn't asked for but couldn't give back. And for the first time in years, I stopped pretending I didn't feel it too. Morning light has a way of revealing everything you try to hide in the dark. I woke up the next day with a strange heaviness in my chest, like my heart had done something it wasn't ready to talk about. The room around me didn't know what had almost happened. The walls were the same, the air was the same, but I wasn't. I didn't hear from Ethan at first. No message, no call. The silence stretched longer than I wanted to admit. A part of me hoped he was okay. Another part of me was terrified that he was pretending none of it had ever existed. Around noon, my phone finally lit up. "Ethan, can we talk?" My fingers hovered over the screen. "Me? Yeah." He called instead of texting. His voice sounded tired. Not broken. Just honest in a way that made me uneasy. "I didn't sleep," he said. "Me neither." I admitted. There was a pause. Not the kind filled with tension this time. It was heavier, realer. "I keep thinking about last night," he said quietly, "and I don't know how to carry it." I leaned back against the wall. "You don't have to carry it alone." Another pause, softer than before. That afternoon, he asked if we could meet somewhere neutral. Not his place. Not mine. A small park between our apartments. A place where people pass by without really seeing you. He was already sitting on the bench when I arrived. He looked normal. Same jacket, same hair, same calm posture. But his eyes weren't the same. They were clearer, like something inside him had cracked open and refused to close. We didn't hug. We didn't shake hands. We just sat. "I feel like I did something wrong," he said after a while. "Not because of you, but because of the lie." I nodded slowly. "Which lie?" He looked at his hands. "The one I've been telling everyone, mostly myself." The wind moved through the trees above us. Leaves shifted, soft and quiet, like the world wasn't in any hurry. "I love Megan," he said. "I really do. She's kind. She believes in me. She deserves honesty." He swallowed. "And that's the part one haven't given her." I didn't try to defend myself, or us, or what almost happened. I didn't try to make it romantic or tragic. "I don't want to be your secret," I said gently. "Not like that." He turned to look at me, and I could tell he was relieved I said it first. "You're not wrong for what you felt," he said. "And I'm not going to pretend it didn't matter. But I'm not proud of myself either." That mattered. He wasn't glorifying it. He wasn't pretending it was beautiful or perfect. He was seeing it for what it was: complicated, human, and dangerous. "I'm not going to rush out and burn everything down," he went on. "I don't get to do that. I owe people more than that." I understood. "And I don't get to sit in the shadows and hope you choose me," I replied. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that. We sat in silence for a long time after that. Not the painful kind. The kind where truth had finally been spoken and there was nothing left to pretend. "I think," he said eventually, "I need to figure out who I actually am before I hurt anyone else." I gave a faint, Sad smile. That's probably the bravest thing you've said. He laughed softly, without humor. I don't feel brave. You don't have to, I replied. You just have to be honest. When we stood up to leave, he hesitated. Lucas, he said. Yeah, I don't regret feeling safe with you. That stayed with me. We didn't hug goodbye. We didn't reach for each other. We just stood there, two people who had touched something real and were choosing not to destroy lives because of it. He walked away first. I watched him go, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly tense, like someone learning to carry a new kind of truth. I didn't feel like I'd lost. I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt awake. Weeks passed. Life filled the empty spaces again. Work, errands, quiet evenings. Sometimes he texted. Sometimes he didn't. There were no late-night confessions, no dangerous closeness, just distance filled with respect. And that hurt in a quieter way. But it was cleaner, healthier. One evening, I sat by my window, watching headlights move slowly across the wet street. And I thought about that night, not as a mistake and not as a fantasy, but as a moment, a fragile, human moment where two people stopped pretending. He said he was straight. Maybe he still believes he is. Maybe he doesn't. But I learned something important that night. Sometimes, the deepest connections don't break your life apart. They change how you see the truth. And sometimes, loving someone doesn't mean keeping them. It just means seeing them clearly, even when they're walking away. That night didn't give me a fairy tale. It gave me honesty. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.